The night was breaking apart, not with stars, but with screams. Aria Vale was running, barefoot, bleeding, breath tearing through her chest like shattered glass. The storm above her wasn't just rain, it was war. The wind howled like it wanted to rip her apart. The trees bent low as if they pitied her, and somewhere behind, the sound of paws hitting the mud. Heavy, ruthless, familiar. Her old pack was hunting her. The same wolves who once called her sister now chased her like prey. Mud clung to her legs. Branches whipped at her arms. Her lungs screamed for air, but her body wouldn't stop, couldn't stop, because if she stopped, she died. Thunder cracked, lightning split the sky, painting her in flashes of blue and silver. For one breathless heartbeat, she saw their eyes, golden, merciless, cutting through the darkness behind her. Lucien's pack, his scent still burned in her nose, his voice still echoed in her mind. "You were never meant to stand beside me, Aria. You're a curse, born of moonfire." Those words had broken her more deeply than claws ever could. And yet, here she was, still running, still alive, still burning inside. Her heart pounded like a war drum in her ears. Her tears mixed with the rain. And beneath the panic, beneath the agony, there was something else, something glowing, pulsing, alive. A mark, faint but burning on her chest, just above her heart, the mark of the ancestors. She didn't ask for it, I didn't understand it, but it was hers, and somehow every wolf chasing her tonight feared it more than they feared the storm. The forest around her twisted like a living thing, roots rising, trees swaying, fog curling low around her ankles. The night had weight, presence. It was like the moon itself was watching her fall apart. She stumbled, pain shooting through her knee as she hit the ground hard. Blood mixed with mud. The scent of iron filled the air. Somewhere in the distance she heard the Alpha call, Lucien's voice, low, commanding, cold. Find her, before the moon sets. Her breath hitched. Her heart cracked. The same man who once whispered, "I'll protect you now," led the hunt to destroy her. She pushed herself up. Her fingers trembled. A flash of lightning lit the ravine ahead, jagged and deep, like the earth had been split open by rage itself. There was nowhere else to go. Behind her, growls closing in. In front, a drop that promised death. Aria looked up at the raging sky, rain streaming down her face like tears that refused to stop. And for the first time, she whispered not to Lucien, not to the pack, but to the moon. "If you made me this way, then show me why." The wind stilled. For one impossible moment, a whisper moved through the trees, soft but sharp as a blade. "You cannot escape what's in your blood." Her eyes widened, the ground gave way, and the world fell out from under her. She plunged into the ravine, into freezing, unforgiving blackness. The water swallowed her scream. Every breath turned to fire in her lungs. Cold, so cold it felt like dying. So cold it burned. But beneath the ice and the darkness, something stirred, ancient, patient, waiting. The mark on her chest began to glow, bright as molten silver, bleeding through the water around her. The river itself seemed to bend, currents swirling in strange patterns, like they recognized her, like they knew her. There are moments in every life when the world decides who you really are. For Aria, it wasn't the moment Lucien rejected her before the council. It wasn't when her pack turned their backs. It was this moment, suspended between life and death, when even the river whispered her name. Aria Vale, the Omega who would not die. Time stretched, endless. Her mind flickered through memories as the cold pulled her down. Lucien's face, proud, perfect, cruel. Her mother's voice, soft and distant. The night she first shifted, when the moon marked her and everyone looked at her like a monster. Too much power for one born so low, the elders had said. She'd tried to hide it, tried to be quiet, obedient, invisible. But moonfire doesn't stay hidden forever, and tonight, the forest had remembered. Her body drifted, limp, but the current shifted, suddenly violent. The river surged and threw her against the rocks. Pain ripped through her side. She gasped, choking, breaking the surface for a single desperate breath. Lightning struck the water, the world turned white, and everything went still. Then, silence. No rain, no thunder, no howls, only the sound of her heartbeat, slow, fading, and the whisper of something not human moving nearby. A figure stepped through the fog at the river's edge, barefoot, cloaked in shadow, eyes like liquid silver. They knelt beside her, fingers brushing her cheek, and the water around her glowed brighter, as if bowing to that touch. "The blood remembers," a voice murmured. "And so must she." Strong hands lifted her from the freezing current. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her, a mark, the same as hers, burning faintly on the stranger's wrist. She didn't know it yet, but the moment she fell, the moment her body hit that river, everything changed. The ancestors had chosen her, not as a sacrifice, but as their voice. If your heart is racing like hers, don't look away, because this is only the beginning. The hunted Omega, the broken mate, the cursed bloodline. Her story isn't ending here, it's starting. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, because here every heartbeat hides a secret. Fade in sound of distant thunder, a single wolf howl echoing in the night. The moon remembers her children, even the ones the world has forgotten. The first thing Aria felt was warmth, a strange foreign warmth that didn't belong in her world of frost and fury. Fire, crackling softly in the dark, the smell of pine smoke, damp earth, and something wild, masculine, filled her lungs. Her lashes fluttered open. Shadows danced across stone walls. Her body lay wrapped in a thick fur cloak, soft against her scraped skin. She tried to move, but a sharp pain flared along her ribs. Her breath hitched. That's when she heard it, a voice, low and quiet, somewhere behind her. "Don't move. You'll open the wound again." It wasn't a command. It wasn't gentle either. It was something in between, a tone that made her pulse skip for reasons she couldn't explain. She turned her head slowly. There, across the fire, sat a man, or something that wore the shape of a man. Tall, still. His presence filled the cave as though it belonged to him. Shadows clung to him like they feared the firelight. His eyes, amber, molten, caught the glow and held it unblinking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Only the fire dared to move. He broke the silence first. Aria Vale. Her name in his mouth felt like a secret she'd forgotten she owned. She froze. "How do you know my name?" A faint smirk curved his lips. "It's hard to forget the girl who burned her own pack." Her chest tightened, not from the wound this time, but from the words. He said it without accusation, but the truth still sliced like claws. "That's not what happened," she whispered. "Isn't it?" His voice was steady, calm. But underneath, something simmered, a kind of restrained heat, like he was holding back more than words. Aria pushed herself up, ignoring the scream of her muscles. The fur slid off her shoulders, revealing the faint silver mark glowing beneath her skin. The man's eyes flickered to it, not with disgust, but with recognition, and something else, something dangerous. The air between them tightened, predator and prey, or maybe two predators circling the same unspoken truth. "Who are you?" she asked. He leaned forward slightly, the firelight carving his jaw into sharp planes. "Kael Draven," he said, "Alpha of Shadowridge." Her pulse stumbled. Every wolf in the north had heard that name. A pack whispered like a ghost story. Hidden beyond the river, bound by old laws, ruled by an alpha who bowed to no counsel. "You're a long way from home," she said carefully. "So are you," he countered, voice dipping lower. "And yours didn't seem to want you back." Her breath caught. He was watching her reaction, studying every twitch, every heartbeat. "How did you find me?" she asked. "You were already found," he said, "just left to die." There was no pity in his tone, no softness, just a fact. But underneath that, something darker pulsed, like he'd been waiting, watching. The silence between them stretched. Rain drummed faintly outside the cave. The fire crackled. The world shrank to the space between his eyes and hers. Aria's instinct screamed that he was dangerous. Every inch of him radiated control, the kind that could break bones or hearts with the same ease. Yet beneath that, she felt something she couldn't name. Recognition. Like she'd seen him before. Not his face, but his presence. In dreams, in the pull of the moon, in the way her mark burned whenever he looked at her. She broke the gaze first. "Thank you for saving me," she said quietly. Kael didn't reply. He just stood, slow and deliberate, his height casting her in shadow. His movements were too fluid, too inhuman. When he stepped closer, the scent of wild pine and storm air filled her senses. His eyes glowed faintly, amber turning gold, like molten sunlight through honey. "You shouldn't be alive," he murmured. "That river kills everything it takes." "Maybe it didn't want me," she said, voice trembling but defiant. That earned her the smallest tilt of his head. Almost approval, almost danger. He crouched down beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body seeping into her cold skin. "You're bleeding again," he said, reaching for her side. She flinched when his hand brushed her rib, but he didn't pull away. His touch was steady, sure. Calloused fingers tracing the torn edge of the bandage he'd wrapped around her. Every nerve in her body came alive. Not because of fear, but because of him. His presence filled the space between heartbeats. "Why help me?" she asked. "Maybe I wanted to see what the moonfire looks like up close." Her throat tightened. "It's not a gift," she whispered. "No," he said, voice lowering. "It's a weapon." The word sank into her bones. He stood again, walking toward the cave mouth, his back to her now. She watched the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt, the way his shoulders tensed like he carried a weight no one else could see. "Your pack," he said quietly, "called for your death. They said the curse would spread if you lived." Her breath stopped. "You heard them?" "I was there," Kael said. He turned slowly, watching. Her pulse stumbled. "Why?" "Because I don't believe in curses," he said. "Only in choices." He came closer again. Each step is deliberate. Her instincts screamed to move, but her body didn't listen. When he stopped inches from her, the fire painted his face in gold and shadow. His eyes locked on hers, steady, unreadable. "You made a choice, Aria Vale," he said softly. "You survived." Her lips parted. She wanted to speak, to deny it, to confess, to scream. But his presence swallowed the words. She could feel his heartbeat, slow, heavy, matching hers. The mark of the ancestors throbbed faintly beneath her skin. It reacted to him, glowing warmer when his gaze touched it. "What do you know about this?" she asked, pressing her palm over the mark. "Enough to know it doesn't fade," he said, "and enough to know it's waking." "Waking? You'll feel it soon," Kael murmured. "The pull, the hunger, the memory of what you are." Her breath hitched. "And what am I?" He smiled, slow, dark, knowing. Not theirs anymore. Outside, the storm had quieted, but inside the cave, a different kind of storm grew. The fire snapped. Sparks jumped into the air. Aria's heartbeat echoed like thunder in her ears. She could feel the weight of his gaze, tracing every flicker of emotion across her face. There was danger in him, but there was safety too, the kind that terrified her even more. Her lips parted slightly. "I should go," she whispered. He took a single step closer. "You can't." "Why not?" "Because they're still hunting you," he said, "and because you're not ready." "Not ready for what?" He leaned down just enough that she could see the faint shimmer of gold in his eyes. Not just wolf, but something older. For the truth. She didn't know why, but part of her believed him. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way he said her name, like it wasn't just sound but understanding. Or maybe it was because, for the first time since Lucian's rejection, she didn't feel entirely alone. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that once trembled under her pack's judgment. Now, faint light shimmered across her skin. The mark pulsed in rhythm with her heart. Kael watched, silent. "It's reacting to you," she said quietly. "No," he replied. "It's remembering me." Her head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "That's not a story for tonight," he said. "Rest. You'll need your strength." He turned away, but she couldn't stop watching him. The way he stood at the cave's mouth, listening to the forest. The way the wind bent toward him, as if it knew him. Kael Draven, the Alpha who didn't believe in gods or councils, only power, loyalty, and the moon. And somehow he'd found her. Or maybe the moon had sent him. Aria lay back, exhaustion dragging her toward sleep. But even as her eyes closed, the last thing she felt was his presence, steady, unwavering, keeping watch, and somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the ache, beneath the fear. The fire began to stir again. He was in danger, wrapped in silence, and yet the moment she met his eyes, she felt seen. The hunter had found her hunter, and neither of them would ever be the same again. If your heart is beating faster right now, it means you're already part of the pack. Don't run, stay with us. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where every shadow hides a heartbeat waiting to be heard. The fire's warmth was a thin thread against the cold damp of the cave, yet Aria clung to it like a lifeline. Each flicker illuminated the scars etched into her skin, the wounds both visible and hidden, carrying memories she could barely face awake. She shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of the past pressing down on her chest. Her breath came in shallow, uneven rhythms, each inhalation heavy with remnants of storm, blood, and relentless fear. Kael moved silently across the cave floor, his amber eyes scanning the shadows as though the darkness itself might conceal another threat. Every movement of his was controlled, precise, a predator's grace softened by caution. When he finally knelt beside her, hands extended not as a threat, but as a promise, she flinched, not at the motion, but at the intent behind it. He smelled of earth, rain, and something deeper, a loss that ran like a current beneath his skin. "Let me," he said, voice low, almost reverent. He began cleaning the jagged cut along her side, the motion careful, deliberate, almost intimate. Aria's pulse quickened, each touch sending shivers down her spine. She wanted to recoil, to push away, but exhaustion and the aching need for connection held her in place. She was fragile and volatile, a spark and a storm all at once, and he approached as if he understood without needing to be told. Sleep came not as rest, but as a portal into her nightmares. Images collided in her mind. The ceremonial stones she had burned with uncontrolled silver fire, Lucien's cruel, unyielding face, the whispers of the pack calling her cursed and traitor. The sting of rejection had not dulled with time. It had only deepened, burrowed into her bones, a constant reminder that she had been forsaken by those who should have protected her. "You were never meant to be loved," Lucien had spat, his words echoing in the hollow chambers of her memory. The silver flame had erupted from within her in response, violent, untamed, pure as moonlight, and had left the ceremonial ground in ruins. Her heart ached with the memory, a scar deeper than any mark on her flesh. Her parents' absence loomed large in her subconscious. Guardians of the lunar flame vanished before she could grasp her own potential. She had been left to navigate exile, power, and rejection on her own. Every night she carried the ghost of their loss like a shadow clinging to her shoulders. The ancestor's mark glowed faintly, pulsing with an energy she could neither predict nor control. A reminder that her lineage was a blessing tangled with a curse. Kael's presence was both grounding and disorienting. She sensed the grief he carried like a tangible thing, a scent of loss that clung to him even as he moved to tend her wounds. He did not speak immediately, instead letting the silence grow thick, almost protective. Then, softly, he said, "You think you're the only one fate ruined?" The words were neither accusation nor comfort. They were recognition, a mirror reflecting her own fracture, and a suggestion that perhaps she was not alone in carrying a burden too heavy to bear in silence. She dared to glance at him. Behind the controlled stoicism, she caught glimpses of something fragile, something raw, a man shaped by grief, yet unwilling to let it consume him. There was a story in the curve of his jaw, in the tight line of his shoulders, in the amber heat of his gaze, and as much as she wanted to deny it, a thread of understanding began to stitch between them. She began to speak hesitantly, letting fragments of her past spill into the cave's shadowed space. I destroyed something sacred," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I was the cursed one. Everyone I loved, I lost, or scared away. I was never meant to belong." Kael listened without interruption, his hand resting near hers, not pressing, not offering false comfort, simply present. The crackle of the fire punctuated her words, a heartbeat in the silence. "Even the fire that destroys has a place," he said finally, quiet but certain. "Even the girl who burns everything around her has a purpose. Even the exiled have a home they've yet to find." Aria's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to flee, to claim that she was beyond redemption, but the weight of truth pressed down on her, undeniable. Her power was not merely a curse, it was inheritance, legacy, and perhaps salvation. The fire inside her did not only burn, it could illuminate, protect, heal. Kael began to reveal pieces of himself, words chosen with care, like laying stepping stones across a fragile bridge. "I have lost so much," he murmured. "Brothers, mentors, a pack I thought I would never survive without. And yet, here I am, still moving, still breathing. I know what it is to walk with ghosts." Aria's fingers unconsciously traced the glowing mark on her chest, a spark of connection igniting at the recognition. He carried the same kind of weight she did. A loss so deep it could hollow a soul, and yet both of them had survived, still capable of choice. "You carry them," she whispered, voice trembling. "Even when you speak, even when you're silent, I can feel the emptiness you've carried all this time." Kael did not flinch, did not deny. Instead, he let the acknowledgement settle, heavy and true, between them. "Some ghosts wait," he said softly, amber eyes meeting hers. "They wait for someone to see them, and perhaps to share the burden." The tension between them was no longer just fear and suspicion. It had deepened, woven with fragile threads of empathy, understanding, and something neither dared to name yet: hope. Hours passed in a liminal space of firelight and whispered truths. The cave seemed to shrink around them, holding them in a fragile bubble outside of time. Each revelation, each shared memory drew them closer. Aria found herself telling stories she had never voiced, speaking of nights spent in forests alone, of power that frightened even her, of parents lost to the shadows of history. Kael, in return, revealed fragments of the man beneath the Alpha, a boy who had once believed in safety, in loyalty, only to be shattered and forged anew. Each confession, each hesitation, was a silent vow. Survival was not enough. They needed each other. "Perhaps," Aria whispered, "we can survive together." He inclined his head almost imperceptibly, as if to seal an unspoken promise. It was a fragile pact, tenuous and trembling, but it held the weight of possibility, the promise that two broken souls might find strength in one another. And so they sat, surrounded by the cave's shadows and the faint flicker of the fire. Two silhouettes bound by loss, power, and the faintest spark of trust. Outside, the wind whispered through the mountains, carrying echoes of the storm that had chased Aria to this refuge. The world had not yet begun to bend beneath their destiny, but in this moment, fragile, suspended, intimate, something greater stirred. Something ancient and inexorable whispered, "The fire will rise, the broken can burn, and the exile may yet be crowned." If you feel the pull of their past, the weight of their losses, and the spark of hope that binds them, don't turn away. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where every heartbeat, every scar, tells a story worth following. The forest ahead thickened, the elder grove looming like a cathedral carved by the moon itself. Each tree towered, bark etched with runes older than memory, silver light spilling over leaves and stone. The air shimmered, charged, electric, as though the grove breathed in anticipation of her arrival. Aria's bare feet pressed into the damp earth, each step hesitant yet compelled, and every heartbeat thrummed with the pulse of something far older than her own life. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying fragments of forgotten languages, soft chants that teased the edges of her mind. Shadows shifted unnaturally, forming patterns that almost felt sentient, a silent acknowledgement that she had come, at last, to the place where prophecy and blood intertwined. Her chest tightened. She wanted to step back, to flee, yet her legs moved forward, drawn by a force she did not understand. Kael walked beside her, his amber eyes reflecting the silver glow like twin fires. He did not speak, did not break the rhythm of the moment. His hand hovered near hers, a tether, grounding her in the reality that, despite the grandeur and terror of the grove, she was not entirely alone. His scent wrapped around her, earth, rain, and a subtle undertone of sorrow, a grief she recognized in herself. As she approached the moon's tear, the air grew dense, almost viscous, humming against her skin like a song without words. The stone sat at the grove's center, carved from pale marble that seemed to drink in moonlight and exhale it as a gentle silver glow. When Aria's hand touched its surface, a shiver ran up her arm, tingling like electricity coursing along her veins. The runes on the surrounding trees pulsed, their light intensifying with each heartbeat she felt, echoing, responding, alive. Her reflection appeared in the polished surface of the stone, and for a heartbeat, it was not her own. A wolf stared back at her, fur silver, eyes luminous with the glow of the moon itself. Fear gripped her throat. She stumbled backward, the wind whipping her hair into her face, yet the vision held, unblinking, knowing. A voice rang through the grove, clear, resonant, ancient. "The one who burns shall heal the broken moon." Aria's fingers clenched the edge of the stone, nails biting into marble, as if holding on to life itself. Her mind screamed in protest. She had no desire for destiny. She had only wanted peace, a quiet corner of the world where her power would not burn, where she could exist without being hunted, cursed, or feared. Yet the grove would not let her retreat. It pulsed, it beckoned, it demanded recognition. Kael knelt beside her, his breath heavy but controlled. His eyes were fixed on her, yet they were not entirely on her. They flickered with realization, understanding dawning like the slow creep of dawn over a cold horizon. "Aria," he whispered, almost to himself, "you are the Flamekeeper, the prophecy. It speaks of you. The one who can unite the fractured packs, the one whose fire can mend what is broken." Her heart stuttered at the words, a mix of disbelief and terror. The Flamekeeper, the title had only existed in whispers, in forbidden texts, in stories older than she could trace. She had never sought it, never asked for it, and yet it had claimed her before she even understood its meaning. Her pulse raced. The silver mark on her chest throbbed in resonance with the moon's tear. Pain and power merged, burning and pulling at her very essence. It was overwhelming, a sensation that made her want to scream, to collapse, to hide from a world that wanted more from her than she thought she could give. Kael reached for her hand, and this time she did not flinch. "You can run from your fate," he said softly, "but it will still call your name." The words were not a threat, but a promise, a warning, and an anchor, all at once. She swallowed, choking back tears, and looked at him. Really looked, for the first time in hours, maybe days. His face was taut with the weight of his own knowledge, the gravity of her power, and yet beneath it all, there was patience, respect, and something she had not expected: belief. The grove itself responded to her hesitation. The silver light of the moon's tear spread, caressing the trees and leaves, tracing patterns on the ground that glimmered like veins of starlight. Symbols of old power swirled around her, a language older than spoken words, ancient glyphs that whispered of duty, of fire, and of bonds that could not be broken. She could feel it in her bones. The blood of the ancestors thrummed, a rhythm as old as the moon itself, resonating with the core of her being. Every fiber of her being screamed for control, for safety, for retreat. Yet beneath the fear, beneath the panic, there was a spark, a tiny trembling recognition that perhaps she was more than her exile, more than her past failures. Perhaps she was meant for this, whether she wanted it or not. Kael's voice, steady and grounding, pierced through the maelstrom of emotion. "Your fire does not destroy by accident, Aria. It chooses when to consume, and it chooses when to heal. You have been afraid of yourself, but the world has always been afraid of what it does not understand." The words hit her like a shard of ice, sharp and cold, but illuminating. Fear and understanding danced together, twisting her stomach in knots of uncertainty and reluctant awe. As the wind rose, carrying the scent of rain, earth, and something metallic that made her nostrils flare, Aria's eyes met the carved runes that shimmered along the grove's stones. Each pulse of light seemed to sync with her heartbeat. She felt a connection she could not name, a lineage that flowed through her veins and reached across centuries. The ancestors were calling, and their voice was woven into every rustle of leaves, every ripple of silver moonlight across the stones. She staggered forward again, hesitant, hand reaching for the moon's tear. The silver wolf in the reflection stared back, eyes deep pools of moonlight and possibility. Her chest burned where the ancestors' mark glowed, and in that burning, that sharp, searing pulse of power, she understood she could not run, not anymore. Kael's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a tether to the present, to sanity, to hope. "We cannot choose what calls to us," he said, "only how we answer." Aria's lips parted, voice trembling as she whispered, almost to herself, "And if I cannot control it, then I will stand beside you," Kael replied, steady as stone. "Because some fires are meant to burn together." The grove seemed to exhale, as though acknowledging the words, the wind carrying them across the trees, the silver light spreading like ripples on a mirrored pond. Every leaf, every rune, every stone seemed to pulse in recognition of her choice, even if she had not yet fully made it. Time lost meaning in the grove. Minutes stretched into hours, the air thick with anticipation and ancient energy. The forest hummed, alive, and Aria could feel the pulse of every tree, every stone, every fragment of old magic thrumming against her skin. Her reflection shifted again, wolf and human entwined, a living symbol of duality, power and vulnerability, exile and destiny. She staggered to her knees before the moon's tear, tears mingling with the rain that had begun to seep through the canopy. It was not submission, it was recognition. She would not shrink. She would not deny the fire that burned through her veins. Kael knelt beside her, not touching but close, presence unwavering. The amber in his eyes glowed brighter, reflecting both the danger and the hope of what was to come. "Whatever you decide," he said, "the world will watch. Some will fear you, some will worship you. But you will define what it means to rise from exile, to become something more than what they ever allowed you to be." Aria exhaled slowly, letting the tension slip, if only slightly. The grove's magic pulsed beneath her, accepting, acknowledging, responding. Destiny had arrived, and though she had not invited it, she could feel its inevitability like a heartbeat beneath her own. The wind whispered through the trees again, carrying a single haunting phrase. "The Flamekeeper walks, and the fractured moon shall heal." Aria's fingers dug into the stone. Her silver eyes reflected the moonlight. She no longer recoiled. She was trembling, uncertain, terrified, yet she was standing. And that, in itself, was the beginning. If you felt the pulse of destiny, the weight of power, and the first spark of what could unite or destroy, don't look away. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where every heartbeat, every flame, tells a story worth following. Rain fell in jagged sheets, each drop stinging her face like shards of glass. The sky was an endless grey, broken only by flashes of lightning that illuminated the twisted, scarred landscape of the Shadowridge ritual grounds. Aria ran, her breath ragged, chest heaving as if her lungs were trying to escape her own body. Her bare feet slipped in mud and ash, but she could not stop. She could not pause. Every nerve screamed danger. Every instinct screamed, "They are coming for you." From the ridge above, she saw movement, shapes coalescing in the storm. Wolves, rival packs, their eyes glinting like molten gold, silver, and amber, reflecting the storm's fury. Their growls rolled over the landscape like distant thunder. She froze for a heartbeat, her pulse hammering in her ears, her mind screaming with one impossible thought. "I am the hunted." Again. Flashes of memory pierced the chaos. Lucien's voice, smooth and cruel, echoed in her mind, biting deeper than the cold rain. "Even your savior will turn on you. He's an alpha. They always do." The words churned in her stomach. Betrayal had become a second skin she could not shed. Her chest burned where the mark of the ancestors glowed faintly, a silver heat searing through her veins, warning her, urging her forward, warning her of her own potential to destroy everything around her. She could feel it rising, wild, untamed, threatening to engulf her. Kael's voice cut through the storm like a blade. "Aria, don't let them corner you." He emerged from the shadows, cloak drenched, hair plastered to his face, amber eyes flashing through the rain. The sight of him, standing tall, unyielding even as the wind tore at his frame, ignited a flicker of hope inside her. He had always been the tether to sanity, the anchor in the chaos of her life. And yet, even now, she could see the war inside him, protector, warrior, alpha, torn between duty to his pack and the undeniable pull to shield her. Her instincts screamed to trust him, to throw herself into his arms and let him guard her from the oncoming storm. But the words from her past, from Lucien, gnawed at the edges of her resolve. "Even your savior will turn on you." Could she believe in Kael when the world and her own history taught her to fear betrayal? The first strike came without warning. From the shadows of the grove, rival alphas and their enforcers lunged, steel flashing in the dim moonlight. Wolves sprang from the darkness, claws and teeth a living, snarling tide. The air exploded with the sounds of battle, growls, shouts, the crack of splintering wood, the hiss of fire igniting on wet earth. Aria felt her power ignite, silver flame bubbling beneath her skin, ready to erupt. Panic and fury collided within her. She raised her hands instinctively, and the earth beneath her feet shivered, splitting in cracks as tendrils of flame danced across the ground. Sparks sizzled as they met rain, creating clouds of steam and smoke that stung her eyes. Kael was at her side in an instant, moving like liquid, his body a shield of muscle and speed. A rival lunged toward her, fang and claw gleaming. He intercepted, taking the blow, and pain tore through her chest in a shock wave that stole her breath. She wanted to scream, to collapse, but the fire within her roared louder, demanding release, demanding survival. "Aria, control it!" Kael's voice was edged with both command and desperation. She couldn't. Not fully. The silver flames pulsed, erratic, a reflection of her inner chaos. Each pulse scorched the earth and seared her own flesh, a reminder that she had always been too much. Too dangerous, too powerful, too cursed. Her tears mingled with the rain, blurring vision and heart alike. Lucian stepped into the fray with a grace that made every hair on her neck rise. He moved like he owned the storm itself, eyes glinting with malevolence and charm entwined. "Aria, you think you can defy fate? Look around. Even your hero cannot save you." He spoke her name like a curse. Her heart clenched, rage and fear and betrayal collided, a tempest within her chest. She wanted to strike, to let the flames consume him, to rend every lie from his smug, perfect face. But Kael's hand on her arm tethered her. Calm against chaos, strength against the storm. The battle swirled around them. Wolves clashed mid-air, bodies tangled in a dance of claws and teeth. Steel struck against steel. The scent of smoke, blood and rain filled her nostrils, thick and oppressive. Every instinct screamed to fight, to survive, to unleash the full fury that burned within her. Yet a part of her hesitated, trembling, because if she lost control, if she let the fire take over completely, nothing would survive. Kael's amber eyes met hers through the chaos. His face was streaked with blood and mud, yet his gaze was steady, unwavering. "I've got you," he shouted over the din, voice slicing through rain and smoke. It was a promise, but one that carried danger. His loyalty could not erase the fear of betrayal, not completely. Her mind flashed back to the council, to Lucienne, to every moment she had been cast out, feared, hunted. Trust? The concept felt foreign, fragile, almost impossible. Then the flame surged again, responding to her fear, her anger, her desperation. They erupted from her in silver arcs, illuminating the grove like a second moon. Rival wolves yelped, stepping back in shock. Trees hissed as fire licked their bark. The ritual sight. Sacred stones cracked, rain sizzling as power clashed against the natural order. Kael intercepted another strike. Taking a wound meant for her. Pain and fear mingled in her chest, rage boiling over. She wanted to scream at him for putting himself in danger, for tethering herself to him, for making her feel hope, connection, warmth in a world that had only ever delivered pain. The pack's loyalty wavered. Some stood firm beside Kael, snarling, fighting, but others faltered, eyes flicking between Aria and the devastation surrounding them. Whispers and accusations rose over the battle. "The cursed flame walks among us. She will bring ruin." Aria's vision blurred. The rain, the flames, the screams, all merged into a dizzying torrent of sensation. She turned away from the pack, from Kael, from the fight that no longer seemed hers to control. Every heartbeat screamed the same truth. She did not belong here. Not with them. Not anywhere. "I'll never belong anywhere," she whispered, voice lost in the storm, swallowed by the roar of thunder. And with that, she fled. Barefoot, bleeding, heart splintered, she ran into the rain-soaked wilderness, leaving chaos and fire behind her. Kael's shouts followed her, a tether she could not acknowledge, a bond she could not yet reclaim. The forest swallowed her as lightning split the sky, illuminating her retreat in fleeting glimpses. Every tree, every shadow, every drop of rain seemed to conspire to obscure her path, to let her vanish. And deep in her chest, the silver flame of her power burned untamed, a reminder that even in flight, she could not escape herself. If your heart is pounding with fear and fury, if you feel the fire rise like hers, don't look away. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where every heartbeat hides a secret and every choice could ignite the world. The tower was a hollow shell of stone and shadow, wind whistling through fractured walls, carrying the scent of rain and damp earth. Aria curled against the cold floor, knees pulled tight to her chest, teeth chattering despite the firelight flickering in the small hearth she had dared to ignite. Each breath was a tremor, shallow and uncertain. Outside, the storm had softened to a dull drizzle, but the night's darkness pressed close, suffocating, a mirror to the weight in her chest. She thought she was alone. She thought she had outrun the chaos, the fire, the betrayal. But instinct, the same one that had saved her countless times before, told her otherwise. Kael was near. She could smell him, copper, rain, and the faint iron of blood from his own wounds. His scent was a claim, a tether, pulling at the frayed edges of her resolve. Then she heard it, a soft thud on the creaking wooden floor. Her head snapped up. Kael's amber eyes emerged from the shadows, fierce, wary, and unguarded all at once. He moved with careful precision, each step measured, each breath steady, as if he were a predator even while weary. He collapsed a few feet from her, the weight of his injuries pulling him to the stone floor. Yet there was a stubbornness in him, a refusal to leave her, even wounded. "I won't leave," he murmured, voice low, gravel-edged. "Not until I know you're safe." Aria's heart thumped violently, conflicting emotions tearing her apart. Relief fought with fear. Desire wrestled with distrust. She wanted to reach for him, to throw herself into his warmth, but the memory of betrayal, of Lucian's cruel smirk and the council's judgment, cautioned her against it. She spoke first, her voice trembling but determined. "Why do you care? After everything, after they called me a monster." Kael's gaze softened, and for a moment, the harshness of the world seemed to fade from him. "Because monsters survive," he said quietly, "and survivors. They deserve someone who doesn't run from them." Her chest tightened. The words cut through the armor she had built, scraping at the fragile layers of her solitude. She studied him, noticing the subtle lines of pain etched on his face, the way his body trembled from his wounds, the ghosts he carried silently. She understood then. Kael, too, was not invincible. He carried loss, grief, and the weight of duty. And yet, he was here, refusing to leave her side. Minutes stretched into hours as they sat in silence, sharing the unspoken burdens of their lives. The fire crackled, a fragile heartbeat in the cold stone tower, flickering against Kael's sharp features and Aria's weary frame. She finally spoke, hesitating, testing the waters of trust. "My brother, my parents. They were guardians of the lunar flame," she confessed. "They vanished when I was a child. I've been running ever since. Running from the pack, from my power, from love." Kael listened, amber eyes steady, focused. There was no judgment, only presence, a warmth that made her chest ache in ways she had long forgotten. "I know what it's like to lose someone you can't save," he admitted, voice low. "My brother, he was everything to me, and I failed him. The curse on my bloodline, it doesn't just haunt me, it haunts every life I touch." The words hung between them, heavy with sorrow and unspoken apologies. Aria's fingers twitched. She knew the weight of survival, the solitude of scars that never truly healed. And here, in this abandoned tower, they shared it. Two souls marked by pain, yet strangely finding solace in one another. Her fingers brushed against her own chest, where the moonlit mark pulsed faintly beneath her skin. It burned when she felt love, a searing reminder of vulnerability she had long tried to bury. With trembling courage, she lifted her hand and showed Kael the scar, its faint silver glow catching in the firelight. Kael leaned closer, his amber eyes locked on hers. His fingers, calloused but gentle, traced the mark, The contact was electric, a current that made her breath hitch and her skin tremble. "Then let it burn," he whispered, almost reverently. The words wrapped around her like a promise, a challenge, and a temptation all at once. Her chest tightened, and for a heartbeat, the storm of her past, the fear of betrayal, and the chaos of the world faded. All that existed was this fragile connection, this shared vulnerability, this dangerous intimacy. The air between them grew thick with tension. Every sound, the crackle of the fire, the soft hiss of rain outside, the distant echo of the storm, was magnified in the stillness of the tower. Their breaths mingled, shallow, synchronous, as if the world had contracted to the narrow space between them. Aria's heart hammered in her chest, a drumbeat of warning and longing. Kael's gaze softened further, and he inched closer. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the firelight, the mark that glowed with silver heat, and the fragile, tremulous thread of trust binding them together. For a long moment they hovered on the edge, nearly touching, nearly surrendering to the ache that had built between them through fear, pain, and desperation. Their foreheads almost met, breaths mingling in the cool, damp air of the tower. Time itself seemed to stretch, a suspended heartbeat between what was safe and what was forbidden. But then, a distant howl shattered the spell, cutting through the night with primal resonance. Instinct surged, caution, fear, and raw survival crashing over desire. Aria flinched, stepping back, the fragile tension snapping like a thread. Kael's hand remained inches from hers, still present, still tethered. But the moment passed. "They're still out there," Kael murmured, amber eyes scanning the shadows. "We can't let our guard down." Aria nodded, her pulse still racing, fire still thrumming through her veins. Desire, fear, and trust tangled into an intricate knot she could not yet unravel. She realized then that this connection, dangerous, intoxicating, impossible, was a thread that would pull her into storms yet to come. The night stretched on, filled with quiet conversation and unspoken admissions. Stories of loss, exile, and the burdens of power flowed between them like a river, sometimes rushing, sometimes gentle, but always leaving traces that would not be forgotten. Aria felt a fragile warmth, a tether to something solid in a world that had offered her nothing but chaos. Kael, despite his own wounds, refused to leave her side. He shared the tale of his brother's death, of the curse that shadowed his bloodline, and of the moments when grief had almost broken him. Each confession drew them closer, threading trust through the cracks in their defenses. "You think you're the only one haunted by loss?" he asked softly. "You think the moon has only taken from you?" She shook her head, tears mingling with rain that still trickled through cracks in the tower. The vulnerability in his voice, the openness of his soul, and the raw power she sensed in him stirred something deep inside her, something that both terrified and thrilled her. Hours passed like moments, the storm outside a dull murmur compared to the intensity of what unfolded within the tower. They almost touched again, almost surrendered to the pull that had been building since the night he saved her from death. But the world, relentless, unforgiving, reminded them that safety was a fleeting illusion. And as the first light of dawn touched the edges of the tower, painting the stone in soft gold, Aria realized that this night had changed her. Not in power alone, not in strength, but in trust. She had allowed herself to feel, to see, and to acknowledge that she was not entirely alone, and that perhaps, just perhaps, someone else could bear her fire without fear. The bond was fragile, tenuous, dangerous, and yet, in that quiet, intimate space, it had been forged, ready to be tested in storms yet to come. If your heart raced with every word, if you felt the pull of fire and longing, subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, because here, every heartbeat hides a secret, and every touch could ignite a world. Dawn did not come softly that morning. It broke with a violent roar, clouds parting in shards of crimson and gold, painting the world in colours that felt too alive for the grief in Aria's chest. The tower that had held their fragile truce now felt colder, emptier. The scent of rain had faded, replaced by smoke and iron. Kael stirred beside her, the faint light catching the sharp lines of his jaw, the bruise darkening along his neck. His wounds were mostly healed, but something deeper lingered in him. A tension that wouldn't fade, a dread coiled beneath his calm exterior. He rose silently, every movement deliberate. Aria watched him, her heart heavy, knowing before he spoke that something had changed. Outside, wolves howled. Not the song of mourning, the cry of accusation. Kael's eyes flickered toward the door, the gold in them dimming to stormlight. "They've found us," he said quietly. "My council. They're here." Aria's pulse quickened. The warmth of the night before turned to ash in her chest. The sound of boots and claws echoed through the clearing as they emerged from the tower. The air was thick, wet with mist and tension. Kael's warriors stood in a semicircle, armor gleaming with morning dew, their eyes sharp and suspicious. Among them, the elders of the Shadow Council waited, their robes dark and heavy, faces carved with judgment. Aria could feel their thoughts before they even spoke: fear, hatred, and the desperate need for someone to blame. Then came the accusation. "3 of our scouts were found dead by the northern ridge," one elder growled, their bodies burned. The flame's mark was on the ground. Aria froze. Her throat tightened, words strangled in silence. The flame's mark, the burst of power that had saved her and Kael during the ambush. She hadn't meant to kill anyone. She hadn't even known she had done it. Kael stepped forward, voice steady. "You think she did this? You think Aria would—" "What?" another elder interrupted sharply. "Lose control? Unleash her curse upon our kind?" The words sliced through the air like a blade. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Aria felt their eyes on her, the weight of their judgment, their fear, their disgust. The fragile safety she had found in Kael's presence was crumbling. And then, through the parting crowd, Lucien stepped forward. He was every bit the serpent she remembered, elegant, smiling, his silver hair catching the morning light like a blade. His gaze found hers immediately, sharp and knowing, the smirk on his lips dripping with venomous delight. "Ah, the moonlit flame herself," he drawled, "still setting the world ablaze wherever she goes." Aria's heart lurched. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been a ghost in the shadows, a manipulator, whispering lies into power-hungry ears. She had escaped him once. But now, seeing him here, standing beside Kael's council, she realized escape had only been temporary. "What are you doing here?" Kael demanded, his tone laced with fury. Lucien's smile widened. "The council invited me. Someone had to make sense of the prophecy your little flame keeps pretending doesn't exist." He turned, addressing the gathered wolves with the charisma of a born deceiver. "The prophecy says, 'The flame that devours shall rise, unmaking the blood that binds.'" He paused, eyes glittering. "She's the flame, and you, Kael, are the blood." The pack erupted in whispers. Fear crackled through the air like lightning. Aria stepped back, the ground beneath her trembling with every heartbeat. "That's not what it means," she tried to say, her voice breaking. "The flame was meant to bring renewal, not destruction." Lucien's eyes darkened with mock pity. "Tell that to the dead scouts, little flame." Kael turned toward her. For the first time, hesitation clouded his expression. It was brief, barely a flicker, but she saw it, the crack in his faith. It hit harder than any blade. Her chest was constricted. The tower, the shared stories, the whispered promises, all of it trembled in her memory. "Kael," she whispered, voice trembling. "You don't believe them, do you?" He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. His jaw clenched, muscles tight. She could see the war inside him. Duty warring against devotion, reason against heart. The silence stretched, unbearable. Then an elder spoke again. "You are our Alpha. Choose now, your pack, or the witch who will destroy us all." Kael's eyes flickered toward Aria, and in that one glance, she saw everything: fear, love, doubt, guilt. The weight of his crown pressed on him like a curse. He hesitated, and the world stopped. The ache that tore through her chest was sharper than any wound. The air seemed to vanish, leaving only the hollow echo of her heartbeat. She wanted him to fight, to defend her, to believe in her, but his silence was the loudest betrayal of all. "You said you saw me," she whispered, voice trembling. "All of me. Was that a lie too?" Kael flinched. His lips parted, maybe to speak, maybe to explain, but Lucian's voice sliced through before he could. "He sees you now," Lucian said softly, almost tenderly, "for what you truly are." Something in Aria snapped. The mark on her chest burned, not with love, but with rage. Power surged through her veins, hot and uncontrollable. The ground trembled beneath her feet, the air crackling with silver flame. Wolves stepped back, fear flashing in their eyes. "Enough," she said, her voice layered with something inhuman, something divine. "You want a monster? I'll show you one." Fire erupted across the clearing, spiraling from her hands, devouring the mist and shattering the illusion of control. The flames danced, wild and alive, reflecting in Kael's eyes. And for a moment, she didn't know whether he saw the woman he loved or the prophecy he feared. Lucian's laughter echoed through the chaos. "There she is, the flame that devours." Aria turned on him, eyes blazing. "You did this. You turned them against me." He smiled, unflinching. "I merely revealed the truth." Her magic lashed toward him, but he vanished in a shimmer of smoke, reappearing behind Kael. "Tell me, Alpha," Lucian hissed near Kael's ear, "can you still love something that could burn you alive?" Kael spun, claws out, fury igniting. But the hesitation was still there. That split second of doubt was enough to shatter everything. Aria saw it, and her heart broke beyond repair. The flames died as quickly as they'd come. Smoke coiled through the clearing. Ash drifted on the morning wind. She stood there, trembling, staring at Kael, at the man who had once been her only anchor. "I never wanted this," she said softly, "but you made me become it." Her voice cracked, her eyes glistened with tears, and she refused to let fall. "Goodbye, Kael." Before anyone could move, she turned and fled into the forest. Her power rippled in her wake, scorching the earth, burning away every trace of what had been. Behind her, Kael shouted her name, but the sound was lost to the storm of her grief. Hours later, deep within the forest, the flames within her began to dim. She collapsed near a river, the cool water lapping at her fingers. The mark on her chest pulsed faintly, a reminder of the bond she had severed with her own hands. She wept, but even her tears shimmered with faint embers, the remnants of a love that had burned too bright to survive. And somewhere, far behind her, Kael fell to his knees in the ashes of what they had once been. The Alpha who could not choose, and the woman who refused to be caged. The prophecy was no longer a whisper. It had begun. The flame had been unleashed, and the world would burn for it. If your heart broke with hers, if you felt the fire of betrayal scorch your soul, stay close. The next chapter burns hotter. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where love and destiny collide beneath the moon. The world had not known peace since the day Aria ran into the woods. For nights uncounted, the moon bled red, a sky torn open, screaming with storms and omens. The packs prepared for war. Lines were drawn in blood and shadow. Wolves turned on wolves, guided by fear, prophecy, and the twisted whisper of one man's lies. Lucian's army grew like rot beneath the roots of the world. Cursed wolves born from his deceit, their eyes black, their souls hollow. The air itself reeked of war, heavy with iron and rage. And yet, in the heart of the wilderness, far beyond the reach of the packs, something else was being reborn. She lay in the hollow of a fallen tree, her body broken, her breath shallow. The moonlight pooled around her like liquid silver, seeping into her wounds, whispering ancient songs only her blood could hear. Pain had been her companion since birth, but this was transformation. Every heartbeat struck like a hammer against iron. The mark on her chest, once a symbol of rejection, burned with purpose. Silver fire coursed through her veins, not wild anymore, not uncontrolled, but alive, listening, waiting. When she finally opened her eyes, they were not the same. The girl who had begged to belong was gone. In her place rose the Flamekeeper, radiant, terrible, and divine. The forest bowed before her as she rose. Every leaf trembled with her steps. The air shimmered, the very shadows bending in acknowledgement. She could feel Kael's pain, even miles away. The echo of his heart calling to hers, through the bond neither had wanted, but both had bled for. His wolves were cornered. Lucian had gathered his army beneath the blood moon, ready to unleash chaos on every living pack. They thought she would hide. They thought she would run. But Aria Vale had been running her whole life. Tonight, she would burn her path straight through fate itself. The sky tore open as the blood moon rose, its crimson light spilling over the valley like a wound that would never heal. Lucian stood at its center, his arms raised, his laughter curling through the air like smoke. All around him, cursed wolves howled, their fur matted, their eyes glowing with void. He wore the mark of the moon's curse like armor, his power stolen from the gods themselves. And then the wind changed. The fire came first, soft at the edges, silver like moonlight, growing into something alive, divine. Every wolf turned to see her walking through the mist, barefoot, eyes glowing like stars on the brink of collapse. Her voice broke the world. "You wanted a monster," she said. Her tone was calm, too calm. "You made one." The flames rippled outward, dancing across the battlefield, not devouring, choosing. The cursed wolves snarled, but the ground beneath them split with light. Lucian's grin faltered. "Impossible," he hissed. "You should be dead." "I was," she replied softly. "But death has no claim on what's born of moonfire." Kael saw her from across the field, and for a heartbeat he forgot how to breathe. She was not the girl he had held, trembling by the fire. She was not the wounded Omega he'd once pitied. She was a force, the moon's vengeance and mercy bound in flesh and flame. Her presence burned through him, and yet, instead of pain, he felt peace. He limped toward her, still bloodied, his sword dragging behind him. Wolves parted in his wake, some in awe, some in fear. When their eyes met, the world stilled. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. "Then where else would I be?" he said. "If this is the end, I'll stand beside you." Her lips trembled, a flicker of emotion breaking through her armor. "You still trust me?" "No," Kael said softly. "I believe in you. There's a difference." The blood moon pulsed above them, and the ground split open. From its heart, the moon's curse took shape, a creature born from shadow and betrayal, vast and ancient. Its form shifted, part wolf, part smoke, part nightmare. Every howl was a scream from souls devoured by Lucian's greed. Aria's fire surged, her body trembled with the force of it, veins glowing white beneath her skin. "Stay back," she whispered. Kael shook his head. Not this time. They stood side by side as the beast charged, its roar shaking the stars. The battle was not fought with claws or steel, but with will. The air shimmered as magic clashed, Lucian's darkness versus Aria's light. Every strike was an echo of everything they'd lost. Love, freedom, innocence. Kael's sword cut through shadow, his movements a dance of defiance. Aria's flame spiraled around him, a living storm of silver fire that refused to die. Lucien screamed through the chaos, his voice warping with rage. You are nothing, Aria. An outcast, a curse. You think you can defy destiny. Her power flared, wild and pure. I don't defy it, she said, eyes blazing. I rewrite it. She reached into the heart of her own fire, into the pain, the rejection, the nights she'd cried alone, and claimed it. Every wound became strength, every scar became light. The moon's curse lunged, but Aria caught it mid-strike, her hands glowing white-hot. Flames roared around her, searing through the darkness. I am not your sacrifice, she said, voice breaking into a snarl. I am the storm that ends you. The explosion of light was blinding. The blood moon screamed, a sound that tore through worlds. The cursed wolves fell one by one, their shadows burned into ash. Lucien staggered backward, his skin cracking, the power he'd stolen turning on him. No, he cried, eyes wide with terror. You can't. I can, she said, her voice steady, and I will. She unleashed everything. The fire surged outward, devouring him, not with cruelty, but with mercy. His scream echoed once, then faded into nothing. The moon's curse shattered, the darkness dissolving into light, and when the flames finally dimmed, only silence remained. Aria stood trembling in the aftermath, her body wreathed in faint silver light. The battlefield was unrecognizable, scorched but alive, cleansed by her power. Kael stumbled toward her, his arm bleeding, his eyes wide with awe and love and disbelief. Aria, he breathed. You did it. She swayed, her knees gave out. He caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold, her heartbeat faint. The mark on her chest, once burning bright, flickered weakly, like a dying ember. Kael's voice broke. Stay with me, please. She smiled faintly, her hand brushing his cheek. The flame doesn't die, she whispered. It just finds a new way to burn. Her eyes fluttered shut, and then the impossible happened. The blood moon, still hanging in the sky, began to fade. Its red light softened, shifting to white, pure, radiant, whole. The first dawn in months broke across the land. The war was over, the curse was broken, but Kael held her still, unwilling to let go. His tears fell onto her skin, glowing faintly as they touched her, as if even grief had magic left to give. Then, beneath his hand, her heart stirred once, twice. Her breath returned, soft and fragile. Her eyes opened, no longer burning but calm, luminous, human. Kael, she murmured. He exhaled a broken laugh, pulling her close. You scared the life out of me. She smiled weakly. That makes us even. When she rose again, she did not rise as an omega or an outcast. She rose as something beyond blood, beyond pack, beyond prophecy. The Flamekeeper. The reborn queen of balance, her fire no longer destroyed, it healed. She walked among the wounded, touching the fallen, mending bones and banishing corruption. Every pack, Shadowridge, Silverthorn, even the remnants of Lucian's own, watched in stunned silence. No one bowed. They simply looked upon her with reverence, knowing instinctively that the moon had chosen its voice, and that voice had chosen mercy. That night, when the moon rose white and full once more, Aria stood at the edge of the rebuilt grove beside Kael. The wind carried the scent of pine and new beginnings. It's quiet, Kael said softly. It won't last, she replied. Peace never does. He looked at her then, not as a savior, not as a queen, but as the woman who had taught him how to hope again. Then we face whatever comes next, he said. Together. She smiled, a quiet, weary, beautiful thing. Together. The moon shone down on them both, no longer bleeding, no longer broken. Its light caught in her hair, her eyes, her flames, the mark of a woman who had been hated, hunted, betrayed, and still chose to save the world that tried to destroy her. If you felt her fire, if her strength set something alive inside you, subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, because sometimes the only way to heal the world is to burn first. Silence fell over the battlefield like a shroud of ash. The rain had stopped, though the scent of scorched earth lingered. Every breath of wind whispered through the trees like a prayer for the fallen. The blood moon was gone. In its place, a pale, trembling light spread across the sky, uncertain, as if unsure whether to bless or condemn what remained. Kael knelt amidst the ruin, his hands trembling as he cradled her in his arms. Aria's body was warm but too still. Her silver fire, the same light that had torn through darkness, that had rewritten prophecy and burned through fate itself, now flickered faintly beneath her skin. Her lashes fluttered once, twice, like the wings of a dying bird trying to take flight. Kael's throat ached as he whispered her name, his voice breaking under the weight of everything they had survived. Aria, it's over. You did it. The moon is free. But she didn't answer. Her hair, silver with streaks of starlight, clung to her face, streaked with blood and tears that weren't her own. Kael brushed a trembling thumb across her cheek, leaving a trail through the soot. Around them, the wolves, both pack and enemy, stood in stunned silence. Some knelt, heads bowed. Others turned away, unable to bear the sight of the woman they once feared, now lying broken at the heart of their salvation. The air smelled of iron and rain. Then, a pulse. Soft, faint, but there. Her body glowed briefly as though the moon itself had leaned down to breathe into her. Kael's heart stuttered. He bent close, his forehead against hers, voice trembling. Don't leave me. Not now. You promised we'd see the dawn together. Her lips parted, barely a whisper, but enough to shatter him. Maybe. The moon never wanted heroes, only survivors. And then her eyes closed again. Kael froze. Her heartbeat, slow, fragile, a fading drumbeat of war and love, and something ancient that refused to die. He looked up at the horizon, where the first sliver of dawn was cutting through the mist. She had done it, broken the curse, united the packs, ended centuries of bloodshed, and yet, this was the cost. Every destiny demanded a sacrifice. Kael bowed his head, tears mixing with the blood on his hands. Then I'll survive for both of us. He pressed his lips to her temple. Around them, the forest began to stir again, life returning to the land that had burned. The petrified trees turned supple, blossoms unfurled, and somewhere far above, a wolf howled, not in mourning, but in reverence. The sound echoed, a promise carried into eternity. But deep beneath the quiet, under the earth and moonlight, something stirred. The stones of the ancient grove, the same ones that had awakened when Aria first touched them, pulsed once, faintly, as if remembering her name. And somewhere, in the reflection of a half-shattered pool, her eyes opened, not in this world, but somewhere between. Silver, eternal, a reflection that belonged neither to the dead nor the living. The prophecy had ended, but something new had begun. The narrator's voice softens, a whisper threading through the silence, almost as if it were not meant to be heard but felt. The Alpha who broke fate lies between worlds. The mate who betrayed her now guards her body as if it were his soul. And the moon, the cruel, ancient witness, watches in silence, wondering if love can defy what destiny has already written. A pause. You've followed her from rejection to revelation, from heartbreak to power, from human to legend. And now, under this fading moonlight, a question lingers. The voice lowers, intimate, heavy with emotion. Would you have chosen her? Or feared her too? The silence after feels like eternity. A wolf's howl breaks it, haunting, beautiful, alone. Then, softer now, the narrator continues, voice brushing against your soul like moonlight through the trees. If her fire found you, If her strength stirred something buried deep inside you, then stay with us. Her story isn't over. None of ours are. Another heartbeat's pause. Because under this moon, every heart burns with its own secret fire. The sound of wind rises, slow, deliberate, carrying whispers in forgotten tongues. The music swells, low strings, distant drums, a heartbeat made of sound. And then, the narrator's voice sharpens just slightly, a thread of command beneath the softness. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, a beat, where every story howls against destiny. The screen fades to black, only the faint echo of a wolf's cry remains. Dawn bled red across the torn horizon, as if the sky itself remembered the battle. Smoke curled above the trees, thin, ghostly fingers reaching toward the new light. The air was heavy with the scent of rain, blood, and the faint sweetness of ash after fire. Kael moved through it like a shadow made of exhaustion and resolve. His body ached, his wounds throbbed with every heartbeat. Yet he carried her still. Aria's weight was both anchor and salvation. Her limp body pressed against his chest, her hair tangled in his blood-soaked armor. Her warmth had faded, but her essence clung to him, a pulse beneath his skin that would not die. The forest greeted them with silence. No birds sang. The wind moved only when he did, as though the world held its breath to watch what remained of destiny walk through its roots. Kael's breath trembled as he reached the elder grove. The sacred stones stood untouched by the carnage, their ancient carvings glowing faintly under the newborn sun. He laid her down upon the moss, cradling her head in his lap, brushing stray strands from her face. Her skin was pale, but there, faintly, the silver light still shimmered under her pulse. He exhaled, a broken sound halfway between a prayer and a plea. "You're not gone. I can feel you, even now." The world didn't answer. A single drop of blood fell from his hand to the ground, his, not hers, and sank into the soil. The stones reacted instantly. A ripple of light spread outward, circling the grove, whispering like the breath of ghosts. The carvings flared, the same symbols that had awakened when she first touched them. Kael's eyes widened. He looked down at her, his heart hammering. "Aria?" Her body didn't move, but the ground beneath her hummed, as though something vast and unseen was stirring. The forest silence deepened, thick, waiting. The air itself vibrated with power. And then, the wind shifted, a scent, faint, sharp, electric, sliced through the air. Not his pack, not Lucian's remnants. Something older, wilder. Kael rose to his feet slowly, muscles coiling in instinctive tension. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless, uneasy. He turned toward the trees. The light between the trunks dimmed. The shadows grew long, alive. And from that darkness, she stepped forward. A woman, tall, lithe, cloaked in smoke and moonlight. Her hair was black as the void, streaked with veins of silver that caught the dawn and reflected it back like molten light. Her eyes burned. Silver, yes, but not like Aria's. These were sharper, colder, eyes that didn't just reflect the moon, they commanded it. Her presence bent the air around her, quieting everything. Even the wind seemed to bow. Kael's jaw tightened, his voice, low, rough, carried across the grove. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head, a slow smile curving her lips. Not cruel, not kind, simply inevitable. "You ask as though names still matter, Alpha." Her voice was like smoke curling through fire, soft, yet it left the air trembling. She took another step forward, the light revealing faint sigils glowing along her arms, ancient marks older than the prophecy itself. The same pattern that had once crowned Aria's skin when her power awakened. Kael's heart stopped. "You bear the Flamekeeper's mark." The woman's eyes glinted, mirroring his shock with cold amusement. "Not hers," she whispered. "Ours." The wind howled through the grove, shaking the stones. Kael's wolf snarled, recognizing the power in her scent, familiar yet alien, wild yet regal. She smelled of thunder and cold stars. "What do you want?" he demanded. She looked past him, to Aria's still form lying among the stones. For a heartbeat, her expression softened, grief flickering behind her composure. Then she met Kael's gaze again, her tone turning to tempered steel. "To remind you that the moon's fire never chooses one vessel." Kael's breath caught. The words struck him like a blade. "What are you saying?" The woman stepped closer, her shadow falling over Aria's body. "She is not the only one with fire in her blood." The last word lingered, a promise, a warning, an omen. The grove darkened as the wind surged, whipping through the trees, stirring the ashes of battle still clinging to the earth. The stones pulsed once, as though in response to her claim. Kael's fists clenched at his sides. The primal instinct in him wanted to challenge her, to protect the one he carried, even now half dead. But something deep and ancient, held him still. Because for the first time since the battle, he felt it, a resonance. A second flame calling to the first. Her fire answering Aria's. The woman turned, her cloak swirling like a shadowed storm. "The moon is not done with you, Alpha." Her voice faded as she walked into the mist, each step dissolving her shape until she was nothing but light and whisper. Then, silence. Kael looked back at Aria, his heart pounding with confusion and dread. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed once, and stilled. He sank to his knees beside her again, breathing raggedly. "What have you done?" The forest didn't answer, but far away, somewhere beyond the mountains, a wolf howled. Not one of his, not one he'd ever heard before. And the moon, still low on the horizon, bled faintly silver once more. The narrator's voice grows hushed, intimate, yet edged with something dark and thrilling. "The prophecy has been fulfilled, but not ended. A new fire stirs beneath the ashes, a sisterhood of flame, a shadow in silver." A heartbeat's pause. Destiny doesn't end, it only shifts its shape. Wind sighs through the grove, the sound of change, of fate turning its wheel once again. The voice lowers, haunting. And somewhere in the dark, the ancestors whisper, "This isn't over." Silence stretches. Then, faintly, the echo of the woman's voice returns, distant but certain. "Book 2 is coming." A whisper, like a promise between worlds. Crowned by fire, the rise of the second flame. The narrator breathes the final words, soft as moonlight. The moon remembers every soul it touches, and every story it burns. The screen fades. A single spark flickers in the dark. The sound of a heartbeat, then fade to silence.